Myrtle Beach, South Carolina is the beach. It's also the perfect place to enjoy the holidays. Here you get all the holiday cheer you can handle, plus 60 miles of beaches and endless fun. Sometimes you need a holiday from the standard holiday celebration. Maybe you want to escape the cold, or maybe you want to start a new tradition. There are themed shows all over the Grand Strand at storied venues like the Carolina Opry and the Alabama Theater. Winter Wonderland at the beach features massive light displays and a brand new family fun zone. Holiday cheer is everywhere you look, like at Brook Green Gardens' Night of 1,000 Candles, where more than 2,500 candles and twinkling lights take over the grand botanical gardens. There aren't many places where you can celebrate the holidays or ring in the new year with an ocean view. This time of year is great for horseback riding along the shoreline, fishing from chartered boats or in the intracoastal waterways, or golfing at any of the 80-plus award-winning courses. Take a holiday away from the average holiday season at the beach. Plan your getaway to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina at visitmyrtlebeach.com.
This episode is brought to you by Charles Schwab. Schwab's passion for serving clients is more than just standard practice. It's part of who they are. With transparent pricing, 24/7 live support, and a satisfaction guarantee, the people at Schwab go the extra mile to help you on your investing journey. They are not just financial people. They're people too. Learn more at schwab.com/whyschwab. So, Jim, I'm wondering if we can start off with the werewolves. Is that possible?
You know, I don't know if I ever really memorized the story. And I don't know if the story was also told in a very clear way.
This story wasn't told in a very clear way, but Slate's Jim Newell knows the basics.
Oh, you ever watch a stupid movie late at night hoping it's going to get better, don't get better, but you keep watching it anyway?
The werewolves in question were being discussed by Republican Senate candidate Herschel Walker in Georgia.
I was watching this movie called Freak Night, or some type of night, but it was about vampires. I don't know if you know vampires are cool people, are they not? But I'm going to tell you something that I found out. A werewolf can kill a vampire. Did you know that? I never knew that, so I didn't want to be a vampire anymore. I wanted to be a werewolf. But then anyway...
Given that Walker is in a very tight runoff race for the last seat in Washington, you'd think it'd be focused on stuff like the economy, election security. But that is not what comes across here. While this anecdote ends with a message about the importance of faith, it takes the long road to get there.
You know, I think for people who weren't sure if Herschel Walker was, ready to be a senator, I don't think that really convinced them.
Coming from a candidate who'd already fought off an abortion scandal and domestic violence allegations, this story became one more piece of evidence that Herschel Walker is unfit for office. Only this moment, it was funnier than all the rest. Within days, this werewolves and vampires thing, it became a running gag. President Obama joked about it.
Since the last time I was here, Mr. Walker has been talking about issues that are of great importance to the people of Georgia. Like whether it's better to be a vampire or a werewolf. This is a debate that I must confess I once had myself. When I was 7.
Herschel Walker's opponent, Senator Raphael Warnock, released an ad that simply features voters watching this werewolf speech and some other notable gaffes and responding.
What the hell is he talking about?
Is he serious? Is he for real?
This weekend, on Saturday Night Live, the opening bit was a simple 5-minute riff on how embarrassing Herschel Walker is.
Maybe in the final push, let's lay low and focus on the message.
Exactly. Just like Kanye.
No. On the issues people care about, inflation, crime.
Vampires, werewolves, that scary little gecko. Yeah. We're going to be looking into all of that.
Yeah. I mean, one media consultant put it like this. They said, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that Herschel Walker might be the most flawed Republican nominee in the nation this year.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many to choose from, but he's the last one standing, so he's gonna get all the attention. He's kind of like the final exclamation point on Republicans' whole problem this year, which has just been bad candidates.
If I look at all this, it looks like Herschel Walker has become something of a joke. But could he still win in this runoff?
Yeah, certainly. Having said all that, certainly.
Today on the show, Georgia is going to the polls again. The result here won't change the balance of power in Washington, but it might answer the question, how purple is Georgia anyway? I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around. What Next is brought to you by Progressive. What is one thing you'd purchase with just a little extra savings? A weighted blanket, a smart speaker, that new self-care trend you keep hearing about. Well, Progressive wants to make sure you are getting what you want by helping you save money on car insurance. Drivers who save by switching to Progressive save over $700 on average, and customers can qualify for an average of 6 discounts when they sign up. Discounts like having multiple vehicles on your policy. Progressive offers outstanding coverage and award-winning claim service. Day or night, they have customer support 24/7, 365 days a year. When you need them most, they are at their best. A little off your rate each month goes a long way. Get a quote today at Progressive.com and see why 4 out of 5 new auto customers recommend Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National annual average insurance savings by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2020 and May 2021. Potential savings will vary. Discounts vary and are not available in all states and situations. This Senate race, the one between Herschel Walker and Raphael Warnock, is sort of the final piece in the midterms puzzle. So for folks who haven't been paying a ton of attention, I'm wondering if you can just step back a little bit, update us on where we left off, like the last time Georgians voted, which was November. Sure.
So November 8th, you need to get 50% to avoid a runoff in Georgia.
This is like just a Georgia thing.
Yeah, I mean, some other states have runoffs. But yeah, in Georgia, it was, I think, about 49-48 Warnock. So no one broke 50. There was a libertarian candidate who got, a couple percent. So it was headed to a runoff. And I think that was, even though it was so close, I think a lot of the campaign groups working in this race expected it to. So withheld some of their fire for the runoff. Part of the idea was Brian Kemp is a pretty popular governor there. He beat Stacey Abrams pretty soundly. He got about 54% of the vote.
So was the thinking he would kind of bring Walker up with him?
Yeah, Walker could kind of ride his coattails. And maybe he helped Walker to an extent, but Walker still got about 200,000 fewer votes than Brian Kemp did.
So it's just a real softness in this candidate. There are some crossover Republicans who are saying, I'm going to vote for that other guy instead.
Yeah, I mean, it's a soft candidate, and also Warnock is the best fundraiser for Senate Democrats, too. So he had, plenty to work with there.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a combination of those couple of things. And, Warnock is an incumbent, too. But you have to think anyway, if it wasn't Herschel Walker, someone with so much baggage and someone who's not very good on the stump, that they may have had an easier time and may have gotten it done.
So let's talk about strategy here. For Raphael Warnock, we talked about how there were these signs that he was attracting crossover voters. So is his strategy basically, let's do more of that? Like, let's convince these folks who may feel a little uneasy about Herschel Walker that, I'm their guy.
Yeah, well, I mean, they have both approaches. They have, organizing groups in Georgia, like New Georgia Project, that had their kind of 10-year plan to make Georgia blue and were successful in 2020.
And that's about base turnout.
Yeah, so they have that part of the equation. They're still putting a lot of money into ground game and turning out the base. But yeah, there is a lot of persuasion efforts going on here. You're seeing in some of these ads that they're doing where maybe you get, someone who may have been a Republican voter and they say, I just can't vote for for Walker. I can't bring myself to do it.
I'm a lifelong Republican.
I'm an independent.
I usually vote Republican.
But there is no way that I can vote for Herschel Walker.
The lies, the bizarre statements, I just don't get it.
So you're trying to, help keep some of those swing voters there. And there's also, some of the people I talked to in my story, they are putting resources into rural Georgia too, Warnock's not going to win a lot of these rural Georgia counties, but they're trying to at least minimize their damages there.
Skim as many people as possible. And I guess that's the approach when you have a lot of money. You just try to get everyone everywhere because why not burn through it all?
Right. And it's kind of a fail-safe too if you don't get quite the Metro Atlanta turnout you wanted. If you don't seed those rural areas and allow them to go 80% against you or whatever, like 500 votes here, 1,000 votes there, like that all adds up to something.
For Herschel Walker, what is his strategy?
His strategy, I wrote in my story, he doesn't really have that nice guy image to protect. He doesn't have, the friendly neighborhood pastor image. Everyone's seen the negative stories against him from his past. So his strategy is much more, the other guys are worse. He's trying to take advantage of it still being in its DNA a red state and saying, maybe you don't like me. Maybe you think Warnock's a nice guy, but this is who the Democrats are. He has ads about trans women in women's sports and just like kind of hitting on these cultural issues that can motivate a lot of Republican turnout. So he's not trying to fight on Dems' terms. His is much more, don't worry about me, fear the other guy.
I've been surprised that in the past few weeks, Herschel Walker has squeezed even more scandal into this very compressed cycle. Like in the last few weeks, an official in Texas confirmed that Walker essentially was a Texas resident and was filing his taxes to confirm that, even though he is saying he's a Georgia resident because he's running to be a Georgia senator. That seems like kind of a big deal.
Yeah, it's just one thing after the other. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's kind of baked in already because people knew from the minute Walker got in that, he was only very loosely, a Georgia resident, as in not really at all, at least until, he thought about he wanted the seat. But there's just more and more allegations against Walker all the time, it feels like. And if he gets away with this and is able to take that seat, I mean, they really got away with something here.
Huh. You mean... because he's not even supposed to live there.
Yeah, and there's just so much he had a classic October surprise where the story comes out, this guy who says there should be no abortion in any cases, here's the receipt from the woman, he paid to get an abortion. That's kind of like an archetype of a candidate scandal. And yet,
It's like hypocrisy 101.
Yeah. And then just the domestic violence allegations, in his past. It's
in some ways, it's kind of impressive that he got, 48% of the vote. It's a lot.
It is. I mean, it's both impressive that, it shows the power of polarization that, you that was maybe their baseline and he just got it. But, he on the other side, he trailed other statewide candidates, Republicans, by 5 points or so.
Yeah. It was notable to me that this runoff was just cut from 9 weeks to 4 weeks by a Republican-backed law last year. And it made me wonder if Republicans regret doing that at this point, because it really gave them such a compressed timeline to, reset things and push their candidate forward.
I don't know if they regret that, and I don't know if more time campaigning would have helped Herschel Walker, I guess we can put it that way. If you look at a lot of his appearances now at events and on TV and stuff, he's not doing a whole lot of the talking as surrogates are. So I don't think, more time would have helped him necessarily. But Republicans, the condensed timeline meant that you could not register new voters just for the runoffs, just because you needed to register 30 days before the runoff and there were only 28 days after the election. So you were unable to get new voters, which was something that helped Democrats in the 2021 runoffs. They actually registered a lot of new voters in that period. So that wasn't done by accident. Republicans were trying to limit one of Democrats' tools there. So I don't necessarily know that they disagree with it, and I think they just want to get it over with one way or another.
In the end, Jim says the legacy of Republican election laws might end up as the most consequential element of this Georgia Senate race. Because while Herschel Walker is an imperfect candidate, Democrats are still having to campaign hard against him.
When you go from 4 weeks of early voting to 1 week, and you make sure that, all ballot drop boxes have to be moved inside government facilities, which are only open during business hours, or you make it much harder to request an absentee ballot, I think those things will have a meaningful effect on the ultimate numbers here. Like, Democrats can still win, absolutely, but on the margins, I think it's be pretty clear that Democrats probably lost some votes because of that. And if you look at some of the stories from this weekend, too, where you have, in early voting, there was, people would show up in Fulton County or wherever, and there'd be 2 or 3 hour lines, and then they just turn around and leave. And I think that, that shouldn't be dismissed if Democrats pull it out anyway. I think it really did trim on the ability for people, and it just made people have to work that much harder to do the simple act of casting their ballot. So I'd like to see a quantitative analysis of what exactly the effect of it was. But yeah, my takeaway talking to people about this was that Democrats did not overhype the damage with that. They can still win, but Republicans made it a lot harder for them to do that.
After the break, who is lining up behind Herschel Walker and who isn't?
Are you ready? Because this has been the worst start to the stock market in 50 years. And Goldman Sachs warns the best case for stocks is to break even. But Bank of America's chief investment strategist has a recommendation. Real assets can offer investors protection against these conditions. Real assets like contemporary art. Because the last time inflation was this high, contemporary art appreciated more than gold, real estate, and the S&P. Masterworks is opening up this contemporary art market to investors, with over 550,000 members and $500 million in art under management. Even as recently as August, Masterworks sold a painting for a 33.1% net return to their investors. Masterworks paintings have sold out in minutes, and there is a wait list, but you can skip it by using promo code WhatNext at masterworks.com. That's masterworks.com, promo code WhatNext. See important Regulation A disclosures at masterworks.com/CD.
This episode is brought to you by Schwab. Do you ever think about your money? Sure you do. You probably think about it all the time. But guess what? Your money's been thinking about you too. And it wants you to know that a financial plan can lead to 2.7 times higher net worth on average. That's why Schwab makes starting one easier than ever, with one-on-one guidance from a financial consultant and a complimentary online retirement plan that you can start in as little as 15 minutes. Plus, track your progress with free digital planning tools. So what are you waiting for? Visit schwab.com/plan today to learn more. In these final days before the runoff, Jim Newell says Republican figures have been coming out of the woodwork to lend support to Herschel Walker. Texas Senator Ted Cruz has made trips to Georgia. So has Senator Lindsey Graham. But maybe the most consequential endorsement has come from Georgia's recently reelected governor, Brian Kemp. After distancing himself from Walker during the general, Kemp is now showing up in full force with the confidence of a guy who has just won office.
It was not that Kemp didn't support Walker or something in November. He did, but he never held a rally for him. He was basically focused, understandably, on winning his own race, which even though he was favored, it was still Stacey Abrams, and he still won by 7 points. He ran a good campaign.
Is it fair to say that Governor Kemp thought of Herschel Walker as, potentially an albatross?
I mean, he may have. I think that, since the general election, Kemp has campaigned with Herschel Walker. He has shot footage of him campaigning, has been used for a couple of different ads. And then there's one direct-to-camera ad that he shot for one of the Republican super PACs. So he's trying to use his relative popularity to drag Herschel across the line. And also critically, he's lent out his get out the vote operation, which he kind of built out of necessity, to a Republican super PAC to help with that element of it.
What's in it for Brian Kemp to do all this work and open up the spigot of money for Herschel Walker?
Well, one, in terms of opening up the spigot of money, the money is going to to Kemp's team because the Senate Leadership Fund, the super PAC that's borrowing his grassroots group, paid a couple $1 million to Kemp's organization for the, the ability to use this. But I think Kemp also wants to show that he's a good soldier, that he's going to help do whatever he can to get Walker over the finish line now that he doesn't have to worry about any of that, splattering back on him and his own campaign. And I think he just wants to show his ability as a kingmaker in Georgia. He could make a narrative like Walker was dead in the water until he got my help, and then I put him over the top. I don't know what Brian Kemp's future ambitions are. Maybe eventually he wants to run for Senate or president. But it would be kind of another arrow in his quiver that he would have to show, look what I was able to do.
Yeah. And I guess if Walker doesn't win, he has that nice plausible deniability of like, well, it just wasn't the right candidate.
Yeah, exactly. It was his fault.
It's interesting to me to look at who is not turning out to give Herschel Walker a boost in this race. Because, while Herschel Walker is personally close with Donald Trump, he's talked about them vacationing together at Disney World years ago, Trump has not shown up to stump during this runoff.
Right.
Do we know why?
I think that was a joint decision between Trump and the Herschel Walker campaign, which I'm surprised that they were able to convince Trump to do that. But, yeah, I think they determined that having Trump out there on the stump and getting all the attention would have just been difficult for them when they're trying to pick up, the median voter.
I guess you could make the argument that it's good for both of them because Trump, you don't want to be responsible if Herschel Walker loses.
Right.
And Herschel Walker maybe is seeing, or his folks are seeing the writing on the wall in terms of what happened in November. So let's just call a spade and agree to be friends again in January.
Yeah. And I think it was definitely the right choice for both of them. Trump doesn't always make, the right choice, though. For example, he would not have encouraged Herschel Walker to run for the Senate seat if he was always making the right choice. But it was a thing at the beginning of the runoff that it could be a repeat of the last election where, Trump makes the runoff all about him. Like in 2021, he was still on his stolen election kick. This time he was announcing his presidential bid. There were a lot of Republican senators and stuff saying, please do not announce it. Do not make this all about you as we have another critical election in a swing state to win. But it seems like they've kind of gotten away with it a little bit and that Trump has been pretty, I don't want to say he's been quiet. He just had a missive the other day about undoing the Constitution. But he hasn't really kind of made himself the main character in politics in the last month in a way that some Republicans thought he would.
Yeah. It does feel like the Democrats want this more, which I guess raises this other question, which is really about what's at stake in this election? Because this is the last Senate race, and we already know that the Democrats have control of the Senate. This would just give them a little bit of a buffer when they're coming up against a Joe Manchin or a Kyrsten Sinema. So does it just matter more to Democrats winning this thing? Or, I don't know. How do you see it?
Well, I think that if you remember in October when the first Herschel Walker paid for the abortion story came out, there was a lot of panic the first night, but by day 2, you had Republican campaign groups and Republican surrogates are all saying, whatever, we need to win the Senate. Ignore everything else. None of this matters. We can't let Chuck Schumer be majority leader again. So that's kind of how they rationalized, trying to get out the vote to support this candidate who had a lot of flaws. That's completely gone now. I mean, Democrats already have, they'll at least have the same majority they currently have. And now they have the opportunity to add a seat. So that's a pretty big deal for Republicans that given how flawed this candidate as an individual is, you can't tell people, suck it up. We need it for the team. There are some smaller stakes. It's better for Republicans to have 50 seats instead of 49 because you get, much more advantageous position on committees and you can slow up Democrats a little bit more. But, people don't necessarily understand all of that. So I do think, I think both sides could have an issue with Senate control already being decided. There might be some Democratic voters, too, who are low propensity, who might think, okay, well, I read on the news every day about how the Senate control is decided. I guess I don't need to show up anymore. But I do think it hurts Republicans more because they have the more flawed candidate. And so if you don't have that lever of you need to do this just for the overall number.
Just suck it up.
Yeah, it's a lot harder, on the margins to kind of get everyone out that you need to get out.
In the piece you wrote about Georgia this week, you said one could write a history of American politics from 2020 to 2022 through the prism of Georgia. So it's only appropriate then, with this runoff, that the state gets to write the final chapter. Do you really think this is the final chapter?
Well, no.
The story continues.
I do think so. After this, you will have John Ossoff will have another 4 years in his Senate seat. The winner of this runoff will have 6 years. There won't be another governor's race for 4 years. So there'll be the presidential race. It's a lot of money is going to go into it for the presidential race. But if you look at what happened in Georgia, where, it was the center of the universe with the runoffs and with Trump's efforts to steal the election, there's still, there's DOJ and county level investigations into that ongoing still. There was the Republicans' voter law, which was a huge controversy in 2021. You have Stacey Abrams and Brian Kemp in this kind of heavyweight rematch for governor's race. And then you have the most expensive Senate race in the country that, won't decide control, but, is one of the two or three most important. So it's kind of been just a lot. And I think Georgia, it'll be interesting to see kind of how Georgia proceeds from here. Is it going to take a path like Virginia, where it kind of breaks that threshold of turning blue and then just gets pretty comfortably blue, at least in terms of federal races? Or is it going to be a North Carolina where Obama won that in 2008 and Democrats really haven't won a whole lot else there since? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that develops. But when I say it's, I do think that this runoff, it's the end. It's officially the end of the 2022 midterms, but I do think it ends a really distinct chapter here.
Jim Newell, I'm super grateful for you coming on the show. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you.
Jim Newell is a senior politics writer for Slate. And that's the show. What Next is produced by Elena Schwartz, Carmel Delshad, and Madeline Ducharme. We are getting a ton of support from Anna Phillips, Jared Downing, Victoria Dominguez, and Sam Kim. We are led by Alicia Montgomery and Joanne Levine. And I'm Mary Harris. You can go track me down on Twitter, say hello. I'm at Mary's Desk. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you back here tomorrow.
This episode is brought to you by Best Buy. Whether you're searching for exciting gifts or trying to snag the hottest holiday deals, Best Buy is here to help. From air fryers for the aspiring foodies in your life to smartwatches your fitness friends will love, Best Buy is your gifting destination for everyone on your list. Best Buy makes it easy to get your gifts how and when you need them with free next-day delivery on thousands of items, as well as same-day delivery and in-store pickup options. Shop great deals on gifts now at Best Buy.